Well, good evening, everybody, on this rather wet and dark October evening. This is the Corporate and Performance Resources Scrutiny meeting sitting on the 18th of October. Before we get going, if I could make the announcement, just to remind everybody that this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and then this recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when they're not speaking in order to avoid background noise when others are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, please raise your hand. That's if you have your camera on, or use the raise hand function. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via that chat function, and that's for the sake of the recording. The use of the chat function then should be reserved really for any technical issues to alert myself or the Democratic Services Officer. Thank you. So if we start with agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. I don't know if we've had any, Mark?
I've not had any through directly from elected members, Chair. I don't know if elected members want to raise any now.
Okay. I just had a message from Councillor Lovelock Edwards to say that she is in traffic and she will be with us as soon as she can. So that's it. We'll move then on to agenda item 2. Now that's the minutes from the last meeting, which was held on the 20th of September. I trust everybody has been able to have a look at them, and if we are content that they are an accurate record of that meeting, can we have a hand to move?
I'll move that, Chair.
Mark, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, only on that, Chair. Just to make committee aware, there is a small typo error in the minute for the 20th of September. What it is in the announcement section of the minutes. So where it should read, the Chair read the following statement, which you've done previously. It reads the Democratic and Scrutiny Services Officer. So if committee are happy to move the minutes subject to that amendment, we can obviously record it on this minute.
I'll move those, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. And Councillor Hamilton, were you seconding that one? You are. That's great. Thank you. And thank you for pointing that out, Mark, as well.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, committee.
Right then, if we now move on to declarations of interest, agenda item 3, do we have any declarations for tonight's meeting? No? Okay, that's marvellous. Thank you for that, everybody. Moving then on to agenda item 4. Now, this is the first report from the Director of Corporate Resources. This report is about strengthening our communities and work to tackle poverty and the cost of living crisis. It details the integrated and collaborative approach the Council is taking and intends to take with its partners, and the use of the cost of living reserve. I think, have we got Tom to take us through this report today, or is it Helen?
It'll be Helen, Chair.
It's Helen. Sorry, Helen. Welcome.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's myself attending today. Tom sends his apologies. And if it's okay with the committee, we have prepared a few slides that we'd like to share with the committee to help sort of take members through the report, because we're conscious there's quite a lot of issues within the report, and we felt some slides might help in terms of explaining some of that a little bit more, if that's okay with everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just share my screen. Okay, thanks. Hopefully everybody can see that okay.
Yeah, Helen.
Thanks. So within the report, as I said, we've detailed quite a lot of information, and we're focusing very much on the work around tackling poverty and cost of living, and also how we respond to a number of reports from Audit Wales in terms of reflecting on their findings and what that means for us as an organisation within the Vale, but also as an opportunity to think a bit more about some of our relationships across with different sectors as well. So as I say, there's quite a lot of information within the report itself. But just wanted to kind of go through a few of the aspects with some slides. So Within the report, we detail the purpose, as I say, that brings together the number of work streams and issues. We've also taken the opportunity to provide an update on some of the work that is being undertaken to tackle poverty and the cost of living crisis, and that relates as well to one of the critical challenges within the current annual delivery plan. Within the report as well, we cover the findings and recommendations of 3 Audit Wales reports that are all Wales reports, and we're conscious there to look at those then in terms of what that means for us in the Vale, because different recommendations will be more or less relevant to us within the Vale. And we also then link in a previous report undertaken by Audit Wales on the work with the third sector. So within the report, we detail different recommendations from those reports, and attached are a number of appendices which set out our response to those reports as well. And then within the report, we go on to talk about how we're trying to pull a lot of that work together to take quite an integrated and collaborative approach to that response, and how it brings a number of work streams together. So both in terms of the work that's currently happening around cost of living and tackling poverty, but also linking to the transformation work and strengthening our communities, and some of the work that's already detailed within the annual delivery plan. What we've also recognised as part of our discussions around this, that it's also quite timely as we start to think about the review of the Voluntary Sector Compact, which was signed, I think it was in 2017. So we've had some discussions through Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee already about some of the work around that, but also the need to review the Town and Community Council Charter as well. I think that was 2019 that was that was signed. So again, some of this work and how we talk about rebuilding and redefining our relationships cuts across a number of aspects of work linked to all of that. And then also detailed within the report, we've highlighted some of the spend to date from the cost of living reserve, which was set within the current year's budget at £854,000. So we've detailed some of the spend to date, and there is a report that will be considered by Cabinet tomorrow that looks at some proposals for some future use of that reserve as well. So in terms of some of what we already know that's feeding into this work, we know that the cost of living is increasing, and within the report we set out some data around that in terms of increases in demand for food banks and in terms of number of people claiming universal credit. And we are also aware that people and organisations are concerned about how they're going to be covering their costs, so whether that's in terms of their personal and household costs, but also some of the organisations we work with as well in terms of sustaining their services. A number of our communities, we're aware, experience significant deprivation, and some of that has been more long-term as well. And within the report, we've detailed some of the work that the Public Services Board is starting to undertake with some of our most deprived communities as well. We're also very aware that the demand for services is increasing, both, let's say, within the council and elsewhere, and that's also sometimes becoming more complex as well. So that's how we're able to respond to do that, and the fact that we're probably all trying to do a bit more with less in terms of making our resources go further. The reports from Audit Wales very much promote that need to be working more collaboratively and more inclusively. So again, the approach that we're setting out reflects that, and the need to understand more about the impact of our work and some of the opportunities, and where there is scope to be more creative as well. And then again, that links to some of the elements of the transformation programme. So again, this is some of sort of where we are in terms of how we're starting to move forward. So in terms of those Audit Wales reports, as I say, there's 4 reports that are particularly focused on within the committee report. The third sector partnership report, which we commissioned from Audit Wales, and that was published back in 2021. We've previously reported that to the committee and set out a response to that, but we need to pick up that a bit more, and we feel that there's an opportunity when responding to these more recent reports to bring that work into the fold as well. The first of the All Wales reports that Audit Wales undertook on the theme of poverty was the Time for Change report, which was published in 2022, and again has previously been reported to the committee, and Appendix A details some of the progress against some of the recommendations and our proposed way of working already highlighted previously. And then the more recent reports that haven't yet been reported to this committee are the one focusing on the role of social enterprises and the contribution that they can make to work on poverty, and the report Together We Can on community resilience and self-reliance as well. And as I say, what we're looking to do is really develop that much more integrated response to how we respond to these. So within the report, we detail the various recommendations, and I'll just pick those up now as well, because some of these will be the first time we're bringing them to the committee. So the time for change recommendations, this is very much around the leadership side of things. So this, some of the recommendations within that report were more for Welsh Government and some for local authorities. And so within the Appendix A, we've detailed some of our responses to this. So, for example, how we've included this work in the annual delivery plan is one of our 3 critical challenges. Work that's being undertaken as part of measures on performance indicators, and to do a cost of living data analysis report, and work is already happening on that. The work, as I said earlier, through the PSB, where we're focusing some work in our more deprived areas. So that's where we're looking at some of that experience mapping in more detail. And we've also recently been reviewing the cost of living web pages on the council's website to update them, make sure that they're more relevant, particularly as we now move into the winter. And then there's also work happening on a data strategy and to review our equality impact assessment. So that's detailed more in Appendix A of this report, just to update the committee on some of the work that's being taken against the report they've previously seen. And this really is just an extract from that report that shows the many different aspects of poverty that members will be familiar with, and I suppose the challenges that we have in terms of trying to integrate some of that work and connect that. And some of this will relate to much of the work that happens across many services within our organisation. Then the Missed Opportunity Social Enterprise Report is one of the first reports that we wanted to highlight today that haven't previously been brought to this committee. And within that report, Audit Wales concluded that really local authorities aren't effectively working with social enterprises and maximising the impact that they could have in work to support communities, bring about some economic growth, and support the work that we may need to do on tackling poverty. So within that report, the recommendations are that we need to really evaluate what that current position is and undertake more engagement, look at those opportunities of joint working, and then develop an action plan that can be agreed and monitored and then reviewed as we're taking progress. So we're taking that on board as part of what we're recommending in terms of that need for that greater understanding and insight to the opportunities. Then the third report that was the All Wales one on poverty is more around community resilience and self-reliance. And this report recognises the need to try and promote more resilience within our local communities, and that may be a slight shift from within some local authorities to how they can help communities to start to take action for themselves, but what systems are needed to facilitate that and what support. So similar to the previous report, the recommendations are about much more developing an understanding of the current position, developing an action plan, engaging with the communities and taking forward that work. And this links very much to work already within our participation strategy. And then I just wanted to highlight, really, as we have done in the report, that the report from Audit Wales on the third sector partnership working, again, is very much about the relationship with the third sector and how we can support the third sector and have more clarity about what our requirements are and what they need from us to support them within that work as well. So very much all these reports are about that greater understanding and building on that relationship. And although we're seeing this through the lens of the cost of living, we also recognise that by improving these relationships, it'll help with a lot of other work. So, for example, work on social care and also our work on climate change. As I said, detailed in the report is quite a lot about what's already happening within this agenda. So although we're sort of at the start of some of this work, we're also got some very established projects. So there's a lot of the work that's happening within our schools and the community focused schools work. So particularly there's a lot of work happening in the Pencoitra cluster, but a number of our schools have projects that have maybe a food element, but also provide wider advice to the community as well. We support in projects like the work at CF61 with GVS in Lantwick Major, and there's funding that's been brought in to support the work there, and that's detailed within the report, as well as how we've used some of the Welsh Government funding through the Food Rail Partnership and through the Food Poverty Project Money as well. So what we're trying to do is think of the different elements of funding that are being made available and how we can maximise those use and connect those, but we feel there's more to be done. We've just highlighted Let's Talk as well, because within that current public consultation, we are asking about the cost of living crisis and some of the challenges. And we also recognise in terms of some of how we can bring together some of the funding, as I say, that we've got. So we've detailed some of the work that's happening through the Shared Prosperity Fund, and so how that is supporting some of the PSB work as well, that we've got work through town centres and how that links in with some of the placemaking work. And we've flagged up warm spaces here because some of that work is continuing, but at the moment there is no specific funding from Welsh Government to support that going into this financial year. However, as I mentioned, we've talked about the cost of living reserve and how that's been used so far to support work around free school meals and to provide additional funding to the Citizens Advice Bureau within the report being considered by Cabinet tomorrow. We also suggest that we could utilise some funding to further support some community projects and provide further support to the food bank as well as some more help in terms of discretionary housing allowance as well. So again, trying to make the most out of that funding to support work already happening. As detailed in the report, and I mentioned earlier, it's just putting this work as well within the context of reshaping. So we've just highlighted here that the 5 ways of working within the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act are very much part and parcel of our approach to this work. So looking a bit more long term, but very much about collaboration, engagement and strengthening communities is very much part of one of the themes within the reshaping programme, but how they all interconnect. So just, I suppose, to pick up some of what we said earlier, as part of this work, we'll be taking the opportunity for work to inform the compact with GVS, how we work with social enterprises and work with town and community councils. And therefore, what we're very much seeing is that need for engagement and to bring in a third party. So we've had some discussions with Compass about how some of that could work, particularly could help around social enterprise, but recognising the wide-scale engagement with staff, PSB members and members of different committees, as well as social enterprise themselves and town and community councils, to shape some of that work and have that better understanding of what the relationship is like from those different perspectives. We feel that by bringing in another organisation, it will bring in a bit more independence and challenge to that work and some of the expertise that we may not currently have in capacity to take forward that work. And we feel that some of the process of these conversations is as important as some of the products that we'll be looking to produce through that as well. So just to sort of conclude in terms of that presentation on the report, we're looking really, as I say, to see this as part of our transformation programme, then starting to have a view towards the new corporate plan that we'll be producing in 2025 and how we shape that. Thinking about the work through the third sector, and as I say, we've been discussing this through Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee, but also the work with town and community councils as well, and really how then it all together will help strengthen some of the work that's already in place around tackling poverty, but help us integrate it a little bit more. And then the final slide, really just a reminder of the recommendations within the report itself, really, where we're looking for the progress to be noted and support for the approach, really, in terms of bringing all of this work together, as I say, in terms of the Audit Wales report responses, but that work around the GVS Compact and the Town and Community Council Charter, as well as noting the use of the cost of living reserve to date, and then really just to share that information more widely with other partners and members. So thank you for that. As I say, hopefully the slides helped a little bit to sort of bring some of the aspects of the report together. As I say, we were conscious there was quite a lot of information within the report that we were trying to bring together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Helen. And as you say, lots and lots of really good work going on there. So we have some questions for you. First of all, Councillor Goodjohn would like to ask some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Helen, for the brilliant report. I wanted to ask around recommendation 6. I'd like you to elaborate, if you could, a little bit more, because you've discussed there in your presentation about GVS and the Voluntary Sector Liaison Committee and the work of renewing and reviewing the compact, and that you're looking for more inclusion, you're looking for more communication. So in comparison to the compact we had last time in 2017, what are you looking to change? What are the particular aspects you're looking, or the relationship to review in order to change the compact for this time round, that you believe can improve the focus on the cost of living, but also improve the relationship overall in the long term?
Okay. Thank you. We had some discussion actually about the compact at Monday's meeting of the Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee, and the compact is between the council and GVS, but is very much provides that framework for how we engage with the third sector. I think we feel by bringing that work into this wider piece of work, we can have some synergies and also maybe some sort of consistency in some of the principles of how we might work across different sectors, and recognising, I suppose, the connections possibly between some of the work with social enterprise as well as the third sector as well. What we're hoping to do as part of the conversations about this work is to engage much more with the third sector about what their experiences are of working with the council and how that might vary depending on different aspects of what they do. So whether that might be as a partner, as a recipient of funding or commissioning, and therefore thinking about what some of that might look like and how we can articulate that. We're conscious that compacts at the moment is probably quite a detailed and wordy document that possibly not all organisations would necessarily engage with to fully sort of, I suppose, understand the framework. So again, we're thinking about what some of the format might be of that and the language, again, recognising that the third sector is quite diverse in itself. So we want to try and pick up the different things around sort of funding, around our relationships as well, but thinking about what the sustainability in the future work is. So what we're trying to do is not just, I suppose, ourselves and GVS just sit down, tweak the wording and sort of have that compact, but actually find out what we want that compact to deliver, but how it sits within possibly changing of how we might do, and say, I suppose, thinking a bit more back to some of that community resilience, thinking about who's providing which services and the purpose and the outcomes of that. So we're hoping that those conversations will help shape that, because things have probably changed quite a bit since 2017, and the need to kind of think about where we are now and what we want that future relationship to look like.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Councillor Carroll, you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Helen, for the report. I must say I was surprised to see one rather glaring omission in the report, and that's council tax, because there's no mention of it at all. Now, when I first read the report, I thought that maybe I'd missed it, so I conducted a search of the document, and the phrase council tax doesn't appear at all unless there was something wrong with my system. Now, I find this baffling because council tax is a very obvious pressure on household budgets across the Vale of Glamorgan, and regrettably, as we know, there have been successive years of inflation busting rises imposed on residents by this authority. So I think it's somewhat inexcusable that no consideration has been given to the impact of council tax on the cost of living pressures within the report. So my question really is, was this an oversight or was it somewhat deliberate given the council's record on this? And given that the report considers the budget in many places, it's quite worrying that council tax didn't seem to come to mind as part of that.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Helen, I'm not sure whether you can or what you can say about that in terms of this particular report on strengthening communities.
Yeah, I'm, as I say, it's not within that report, but I think it's probably likely to be something that might come through in some of the discussions that we will be having. We've also mentioned within the report that we will be producing future progress reports on our work on the cost of living and tackling poverty. So we can certainly look to widen the scope of those to pick up some issues as well.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Helen. I'm going to, probably Helen can probably guess, I'm going to focus on some of the PSB work that's relating to enduring deprivation within areas in Barry, which have been identified as being amongst the worst in Wales in terms of the Wales indices of multiple deprivations. One of the pieces of work is obviously the employment of a community development officer across those areas, which includes part of my ward. And it's been, I'm glad to see that they're in place, and I've met with them on several occasions now. What I'd like to, I've got two specific questions. And I don't know if this was squared off in any way in Environment and Regeneration meeting last night around the Shared Prosperity Fund spend. But one of the items that was part of the SPF spend, and it's in Helen's name as an officer, is about tackling poverty and deprivation programme, which is funding this caseworker. And it says in last night's meeting that it was to be approved at £100,000, but the total bid was for around £370,000. And I was just wondering if Helen could explain what that bid entailed and what therefore might be missing, because it seems a bit strange that we're talking about the importance of this and yet the SPF funding that's been allocated is only barely a quarter of the amount that was being suggested in the bid. So I'm just wondering if there's background to that, or if that's been picked up somewhere else within council work.
Yes, in terms of the original bid, the bid was, as you say, a larger bid, and that was for a number of posts in terms of more of that team working across those 3 LSOAs that were identified as our most deprived areas to sort of sustain that work over the 2 years that the funding would have been available for. There was a huge demand on the bid in terms of that funding pot itself. So we were very pleased to have received something, but yes, it wasn't as much as we originally had asked for. What we have looked to do, though, is place that community development worker within the regeneration team. So they are within a team of other community development workers. So there is additional support and expertise there, and then sort of also being managed within that team as well. So I think whereas we originally thought that might need to be a slightly separate team, although we only got funding that enabled one post to do that dedicated work, they are within a larger team with more expertise and ability to take forward some of that work as well. So that's sort of the position we are with that one at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that, Helen. I mean, I understand the case you've just made, but it does look very strange to be discussing this as a priority and then say that something that's coming through as a bid, wasn't being prioritised amongst the wider SPF funding. So there's an awful lot of things that are in there, all of which are very important, obviously. But it's interesting hearing it in this context. I was wondering also this one of the points you're making. It's in 220 of today's report is about additional funding allocated to the people and skills theme in SPF. About a new hub in Barry to advise people about skills and employment opportunities. I'm just wondering if you could unpack that. I mean, is there a location for that? Is there a timescale for that? Can you tell me a bit more about that? Thanks, Helen.
So I don't have more detail on that particular project, but I can certainly find out a little more detail, and we can circulate that to members of the committee.
Yeah, thanks. I'd appreciate that, because I've seen a planning application for a change of use on a building that's in my ward recently, and I'm trying to work out if I should be joining some dots together on that, or if this is completely different and separate. And I need to ask a different set of questions to different sets of people about that. So thanks so much, Helen.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Helen. Yeah, so a couple of points, and if you don't mind, sorry, Chair, I usually say too much. First off, these reports were November, December and January, if I remember rightly from what I read earlier. It would be nice if they came through a little bit quicker, should we say, to this committee, particularly when you're talking about cost of living. There's one thing that stood out on the Together We Can Community Resilience and Self-Reliance, a statement: most local authorities recognise the need to create more resilient and self-reliant communities, but very few have clearly defined what this means or entails. Yet we've done a report, and I still don't think we are defining what this means or entails. So I would ask that the officers do a bit more work on that, if you don't mind. That's more of a statement, but moving on then to warm spaces. There's a real shortage here in rural Vale, and now we're being told there's no money. Yet I said this last year when there was a problem with shortage. Why don't you reach out to the public houses for a pittance of the money that you require to open a building? You could engage them, and you could have warm spaces in the rural Vale a lot easier. Perhaps that can be taken on board. Right, and then moving on again, if you don't mind, Chair. Happily, the GVS compact has been covered, but according to the report, it ran out in 2021, so I assume it was extended, perhaps. And also the council taxes are being covered, so I won't need to talk about that either. There's one other thing which I think this report really could have shoved in. I know it's quite recent, but as the Welsh Government is stopping funding for breakfast clubs in schools, and therefore the schools are going to have to fund them out of their own budget. Well, this is going to be awful for the schools. Could there not have been a solution in this report put forward for that? Perhaps we as a committee could ask the Cabinet to look at funding breakfast clubs from outside the education budget. If you don't mind, Chair. And that's a lot.
That's okay, Councillor Haynes. I mean, I can say one thing about the warm spaces in public houses in the rural Vale, because we had them in our ward. So I think it's something that has been happening. But the rest I'll hand over to Helen, if you don't mind.
Thank you. If I just pick up on the warm spaces issue first, as I say, there is in a report going to Cabinet tomorrow looking at the use of the cost of living reserve. We have proposed the use of some money to support projects like the warm spaces. And what we found in how we used the funding that we had from Welsh Government last year was that by that funding going out to the community sector and where it could enhance their offer in terms of teas and coffees and whatever, it actually could go quite far and actually kind of give those attractive offers. And also we had our libraries providing those services as well. So we are keen to sort of see a diverse range of offer, and as you say, that's developed within the communities to meet the different needs and actually reflect what's in existence within those communities to take that work forward. With regards to the GVS compact, yes, it did run out in 2021. We have continued to work very closely with GVS on a number of projects and meet very regularly with them, and we will be continuing to do that. And yeah, hopefully we will get a new compact in place as soon as possible to reflect that work. I've made a note of what you said of the breakfast clubs as well, and it may be that somebody else wants to come in on that as well. And also your requesting in terms of us being clear about what we mean around sort of the community resilience work, and we'll pick that up, I think, as part of that conversations and engagement that we need to take forward. And I think that's come through in quite a few of the things with the Audit Wales reports, in actually as we have those conversations that there's a shared understanding. So even things like actually what people understand by a social enterprise as well, so that we can kind of frame those conversations and make sure we all are talking about the same thing. So thank you for your helpful comments in terms of taking that work forward.
Thank you, Helen. And yes, I assume Councillor Burnett is going to come in on breakfast clubs as well. I hopefully she is, because I do hope we can do something about this.
I'm sure she will.
Thank you, Chair.
And I think I agree with what Helen has just said about this. It's a fundamental shift for the council, isn't it, from being a provider to an enabler, and that's the sort of thing that you have to really do, having those face-to-face conversations so everybody can understand and empower them, because I'm pretty sure that our community groups with a little bit of a holding hand, they'll want to do a lot of this work. So I think this is it is a really good step forward, I'm sure. And Councillor Burnett, would you like to come in on the Breakfast Club questions?
Thank you, Chair. I can come in on a couple of items if that's okay.
That would be lovely.
The comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of things. I really welcome this report, because when you think about how things have changed just in the last few years, and when Helen was just talking about the compact running out a couple of years ago, and haven't times changed? since then in terms of the partnership we have with GVS and other organisations, the way in which we've worked together through the pandemic, the way in which we've worked together through the cost of living crisis. And I think that there's a lot more understanding, a lot more shared direction. You know, we have got a much clearer understanding of how we can work in partnership, which will be really useful as we go forward. Also, you know, we were talking about an understanding of social enterprise. Yes, when you actually think of what we've achieved through Big Fresh, which was probably one of our best social enterprises. If you look at the Barry YMCA hub, which is an absolutely superb example of a social enterprise, those sorts of things. Whereas you've got some organisations that are more of a social business, and then you've got other organisations that are more of a voluntary sector organisation, maybe with a mixed funding stream, you know, a little bit of trading or whatever. And we have to understand which model the different organisations that we've got in the Vale have adopted, so that we can work with them most effectively. You know, what is their preferred sort of business model. We've heard a couple of things really. First of all, we've had a couple of questions about council tax. I'll come on to that after. We've also had a thing about, can't we pay for breakfast clubs, and can't we pay for other warm welcomes elsewhere in the Vale? Well, we could. Yes, we could. As you'll see from the report, we actually took a decision that we would make a payment to families that receives preschool meals during the summer holidays, and that was, it didn't cover the payment that they would normally get. It was £50 per child for the whole of the school holidays. That was a decision that we took in terms of the cost of living crisis. Should we pay for breakfast clubs? Well, that's a decision, isn't it? That's a decision that has to be made, and that's, you know, that is something that this council would have to look at. Is something that this council would have to look at in terms of whether or not we support warm hubs, because that's actually outside of our statutory responsibilities. It's outside of our current budget, and that's where we have to come on to council tax. And over the coming months, we're going to have lots of these discussions, aren't we? We're going to have lots of discussions about what does the council's budget get spent on, and how do we make sure that we have enough. Last year, the decision was taken, because of the cost of living crisis, that our council tax increase was less than half the rate of inflation at that time. And I was just looking something up. I'll just have a quick look at this. It's worth knowing, because I was looking at this when we were having some budget discussions last week. This council, since 2010, has had to make £67.5 million worth of savings in its budget setting processes. And if you actually look at that in terms of compound interest, it's an awful lot more in terms of real terms and in terms of where we are. And you see an awful lot of stuff in the press about other councils that are serving Section 114 notices. There aren't any of those in Wales. But I can say, you know, there are quite a lot in England. It is our responsibility. We have to set a balanced budget. And so what I would say is, this report is a really powerful report about what the situation is for our residents and what we have been trying to do as a result of that. And what I would say is please, as we go forward over the coming months, as we discuss the pressures on our budgets, those conversations have to happen in those meetings, not on the 6th of March, because it will take all of our collective efforts to protect people that are suffering serious disadvantage through the cost of living crisis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. Do we have any other questions then on this report? Okay, can I ask two? Is that okay, Helen? I like to wait for everybody else to have their say because I think they might have what I want to ask anyway. So this is really, I noticed in the Welsh Audit Time for Change report, they're calling on Welsh Government to set targets to alleviate and tackle poverty. Now I'm wondering how that sits with us and if we are having conversations about Welsh Government with what they're going to look like and how we're going to do that. And then it was just one about pensioners, because in our country there are more pensioners in poverty than the other three nations, and I know it's only gone up a little bit, but 19% of the population is quite high, and they worry me more than anything because they are not necessarily in a position to do anything about it, being pensioners. So I'm wondering if going forward within the work that we're doing here, if there is more that we can do to concentrate on that particular group of people and to try and alleviate their suffering. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. With regard to the recommendation in the Audit Wales report for targets on Welsh Government, I haven't been party to any discussions to date with them in terms of what their response to that is or what those might look like. I do attend meetings of an All Wales sort of tackling poverty group of officers, and it's not something that's been coming through there. So I'm not sure actually whether that is something that's actually going to be on the horizon, although I know there is work happening on a child poverty strategy with Welsh Government, so it might be done as part of that, but obviously that won't cover the whole of the population there as well. But I can ask them to go back with that as a question and see what the Welsh Government response in that, and if there is any timeline for us on that. And I would hope that we would be consulted on any proposed targets as well in terms of their meaningfulness and relevance. Yeah, I think there as well. With regards to the question in terms of older residents within the Vale, again, I think we're very conscious of the fact that, yes, we have an ageing population and the need to ensure that those needs are being met. We found, for example, with the warm spaces work last year, that actually quite often a lot of that people were accessing those warm spaces really around the sort of the loneliness and isolation elements as much as anything else. And the feedback we got was actually that people enjoying that social element. So where through the warm spaces funding we were able to enhance what some of the offer was, that we were feeling that there was those multiple benefits there as well. We have got an age-friendly Vale officer in post who's been doing some really good work around age-friendly, and we've got the age-friendly Vale status from the World Health Organization as well. So we've recently been advised we've got that, which sort of recognises our commitment to be more age-friendly. And as part of that is, again, a big partnership piece of work. And very much within that, we're engaging with other partners and the community to discuss some of these issues and find out what we need to do. So again, through that, we've been trying to do some work to raise awareness of what some of the advice and support is that is available to people, and particularly trying to do some of the work around pension credits as well, and we've been trying to find out how best we can target some of that work and where we need to do that. So again, we're very much seeing that as part of that age-friendly work as well, and working with services across the council. And tomorrow we have our 50+ forum AGM, and there we will have stalls as well. So we again always take the opportunity we can to have different people there to provide information advice. So for example, we've got shared regulatory services coming and talk about some of the issues that they may face, but we also have got some advice and support services as well. So we're very keen to make sure we integrate all of this work as much as we can to recognise, as you say, those particular needs, and that not everyone will necessarily ask for help and come forward in the normal routes, and to try and work through as many ways as we can.
Thank you. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's a group of people that tend not to ask for help. They're not digitally included, and especially when we're talking about the rural Vale, they're probably hard to reach. And I think that's why it's something that concerns me greatly, because I know how difficult it would be to help them, and they're probably going under the radar. And that's especially with winter approaching. anyway, but thank you, Helen, and thank you committee for everybody's contribution there. I think that was a really good debate. We've got 9 recommendations to go through now, so I'm afraid I'm going to be just reading them out, but for the sake of the recording it's necessary to do that, so please everybody bear with me. So the recommendations here are that committee notes the work being undertaken with regards to tackling poverty and the cost of living crisis, and that committee notes the proposed approach for future reporting of work on tackling poverty and the cost of living, which is a critical challenge within the annual delivery plan 2023-24. Number 2 is that committee endorses the approach outlined in this report for engaging with a range of stakeholders to determine how the council can work better with the third sector and social enterprises and increase community resilience through an integrated response to the Audit Wales report. Number 3, that committee notes the progress made in response to the recommendations in the Audit Wales report Time for Change, Poverty in Wales, as set out in Appendix A to this report. Recommendation number 4, that committee endorses the response to the recommendations in the Audit Wales report A Missed Opportunity Social Enterprises, as set out in Appendix B to this report. Recommendation number 5, that committee endorses the response to the recommendations in the Audit Wales report Together We Can, Community Resilience and Self-Reliance, as set out in Appendix C to this report. Number 6, that committee notes the proposal to include work to develop the above in conjunction with a new voluntary sector compact with Glamorgan Voluntary Services, a review of the terms of reference of the Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee, and work to revise the Town and Community Council Charter into the programme of work outlined in this report, whilst recognising that the Compact Committee and Charter have a broader focus than poverty and the cost of living. Agenda number 7, that committee notes the use of the cost of living reserve to support those in need. Recommendation number 8, that the committee refers this report to Cabinet for oversight, Governance and Audit Committee for noting the response to the regulatory recommendations made, and the Community Liaison Committee and Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee for their comments, and then to be referred to Cabinet for consideration, and the updates on progress are also provided at those meetings. And at last, recommendation number 9 is that this report is circulated to all elected members and the Public Services Board for information. Whew. Okay, so if everybody can agree with that, can we have a hand to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn, and a seconder, Councillor Hamilton Hanks. Thank you ever so much, everybody. Thank you, Helen. You've provided us with lots of information, lots to think about, and you can go and enjoy your evening now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Right then, so agenda item 5 now, everybody. We're sticking with the reports of the Director of Corporate Resources. This is our first and second quarter scrutiny recommendation tracker 2023-24. And we've also got the updated committee forward work programme schedule 23-24. I think, Mark, you were going to just quickly run through that for committee.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, committee. This is our regular report that comes along to the committee. The reason why we've combined the first and second quarter is that usually the first quarter can be fairly quiet. So obviously it's sometimes better to combine that with the second quarter in order to have a bit of a more fuller view of what's going on in terms of recommendation tracking and the work programme. So the key thing areas to point out is firstly the purpose of the report is to obviously report progress on the scrutiny recommendations that have been made by the committee and to consider the updated forward work programme together with any slippage for 2023-24. Sorry, Chair, I think Councillor Johnson has his hand up, so don't know if he wants to.
It's to ask a question later, Mark.
All right, thanks, Councillor. So to check just in case I wasn't coming through or something was wrong then. Okay. In terms of the recommendations, we just have two recommendations. Your committee will be pleased to hear for this one. So that is the status of the actions listed in appendices A to D to the report be agreed. And also then number 2, that the updated forward work programme schedule for 23-24 as attached appendix E be approved and then uploaded to the council's website. Just referring to appendices A to D in the report, these refer to the Scrutiny Committee's historical recommendations. Just to note, the majority now are complete, but where there are recommendations that remain still sort of ongoing or open, an explanation or update has been provided for those prior to them being eventually completed. As part of this, the Scrutiny Committee elect members are requested to review progress against each recommendation, to assess whether further action may be required, ensure the required action is undertaken, and to confirm which recommendations are to be agreed as completed. For the work programme schedule, that provides a breakdown of reports. So obviously the ones that we've already had over the last couple of months, but also those that are anticipated to be considered by the Scrutiny Committee over the forthcoming months, with any slippage, etc., detailed within the work programme table. The work programme has been aligned to the quarterly Cabinet Forward Work Programme for July to September 2023 and October to December 2023. It's important to note, and this is our usual caveat about the work programme, is that the schedule is a proposed list of items for consideration and may be subject to change depending on prevailing circumstances. The schedule includes notes and reports that have been subject to slippage during this period. The committee is therefore asked to consider its forward work programme, and as part of that, to identify specific areas of interest for the committee, how best to engage stakeholders, including ward members and the public, most appropriate forms of scrutiny for each. For example, we have a table in there around the task and finish proposal that was agreed by the chairs and vice chairs, and the issues where scrutiny have the most impact and value to be gained into the scrutiny work programme, with topics potentially coming from a number of sources, such as individual councillors, inspection reports, referrals from council, such as notices of motion, cabinet audit or other scrutiny committees, service users, residents of the Vale of Glamorgan, just to name a few. As part of this, there is the proposed relaunch of the scrutiny topic suggestion form that exists on the council's website. This is in the process of being done, so obviously I will update members when that is fully updated and complete. In terms of the task and finish group, as I've already mentioned, it was agreed by chairs and vice chairs for this to go as the first one amongst the scrutiny committees, and obviously to cover the procurement issue that was raised. I will be bringing a report to committee in the near future, setting out a report that sets out the terms of reference and then seeking members to join that group as part of that process. Just to refer members as well to paragraph 2.15, there's now an updated link policy now added to the report concerning scrutiny and cabinet roles and responsibilities. On previous versions of the decision tracking and forward work programme report, we had an older version that is out of date, so this has the latest version from 2021 now. Just to finish off, just to remind members really that ultimately the work programme for corporate performance resources is yours, and therefore please do consider what reports and updates you'd like from officers, in addition to obviously our usual statutory or cabinet references. Just to have in mind, that they need to be areas within the remit of corporate performance, but if members do have other ideas, they can obviously share with members of the relevant scrutiny committee for their work programmes. That's just a whistle-stop tour, Chair, and obviously we're happy to take any questions or suggestions from yourself and the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Johnson had his hand up first, so please feel free.
Yes,
Thank
you very much, Mark, for the report there. I think I actually want to focus almost on the last point that you made, which was a suggestion that somehow the committee actually have ownership over the work programme here, because it's page, I think, 41, 42 of the report. It refers to the Oracle implementation project, which we were going to have a report on, and we asked for that report in October last year. So that's a full 12 months ago that we asked for a report on that. It was in the same meetings we were discussing budgetary overspend, that we asked for a report on the leisure contract overspend that was part of the 22-23 financial year, and that took 7 months for it to reach us. We have a suggestion there that there is a report on unacceptable actions, which was discussed at the meeting in April 2022 and has never come back with any updates at this committee. In fact, before most people here were actually on the committee or even on the council. It was to do with social media policy, I believe. So I'm a little concerned at the sort of the suggestion that we are responsible for the forward work programme, because actually the forward work programme largely consists of reports that go to cabinet and are then referred on to us, or issues that are in the corporate calendar for discussion. And I don't think there's actually very much here that comes from the committee. So what I'm looking for tonight is an idea, if you've got one, Mark, of when we might be getting this report that we asked for a year ago, and whether we can realistically have a process here whereby something that is comes organically from the committee or goes through one of the processes that are supposedly in place, whether that's the public asking for something, whether it's committee members asking for something outside of this, a consideration, report for consideration, that we might actually have consider that democratic services have resources to do this and will prioritise it. Because if we're saying that the committee is responsible for the work programme, then actually those reports should be prioritised by democratic services. And I'm happy to have this with my democratic services committee chair's hat on discussion with the head of democratic services, or can come back somewhere else. But I feel quite strongly that actually, if we're going to say that committees own the report structure and own the timetable, then things that are requested should actually come forward within a meaningful time frame. My own experience of this, the last time I put something in, it took more than a year to come back. And that was regarding libraries that went in. I went in January 2019. I think it came to committee in February 2020, and we've never seen anything of that since. After COVID. So I'm flagging that up with concern, because I think that not getting something for 12 months. I can see Matt Boner's got his hand up there, but not getting something for 12 months, I think is it's not really acceptable in terms of our forward work programme. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. There are some elements of what you said that I kind of agree, because we are beholden to this work programme and other committees doing the work before we get our report. So I think you're, that is definitely right. I remember with the Oracle issue, we were waiting for some rather sort of like legal sort of difficulties to be resolved, weren't we? I remember that's what we were told when they were looking at that, and hopefully Matt will be able to tell us where they are with those discussions. Mark, have you got any other comments on what Councillor Johnson has said, specifically where reports are waiting for a year or so before they even get to the work programme?
Right. What I was saying now, obviously, we rely on colleagues and the relevant directors and departments to provide those reports, but sometimes there are reasons why they cannot provide those necessary straight away. But obviously, I appreciate the amount of time that has been involved. I will chase those up again with the relevant officers. and provide a response to the committee on those and where we are at with those. They have been chased up previously, but as I say, for various factors, sometimes they, for whatever reason, they have not been fully completed, so they haven't come to committee. But I will make sure that they are chased up again, and we'll have a response that will come back to the committee on those as soon as I have something. I don't know if Matt has anything to come in. Obviously, I can see Councillor Franks as well wants to come in, so I don't know if Matt wants to come in on specifically this or.
That would be
if you're
good.
Happy.
Definitely, if he can help answer some of Councillor Johnson's questions, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, I can certainly understand Councillor Johnson's frustrations, and those are the committees on this matter. As is set out in the report, the request first came back best part of a year ago now. You'll recall that initially we had to delay the go live, so we went live a little bit later than planned. So we went live in April, and then as you've just set out, Councillor Prothero, there were some legal issues to sort out. That's all resolved. The project manager we'd engaged to lead us in the project is back with us for a period of 3 weeks. He's overseeing a really very comprehensive lessons learned exercise with everybody who was involved in the project. We're working through that at the moment, and my expectation is that we should be able to bring a report back to this committee optimistically next cycle, but certainly before Christmas. And apologies for the delay that you've had to endure to date.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Franks, would you like to?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Different aspect now, but it concerns the forward work programme, and I'm seeking guidance. I'm sure we're all aware of the rather dramatic statement issued by Welsh Government yesterday regarding the in-year budget cuts, and I must say I'm very surprised that such things are happening, but they are. But there are potentially big implications of this revised budget for local authorities. Now, I understand that our rate support grant and that type of thing is protected. However, there are £74 million of cuts in education, revenue and capital, though I'm not totally clear if it's 74 plus capital, but there you are. So we're told there'd be no cuts to local government, great, but I know we'll all be aware that a lot of schools are very dependent on specific grants that come directly from Welsh Government, pupil development grant and the like.
Councillor Franks, and I'm really sorry, I hate to interrupt anybody in full flow, but I'm just trying to work out from what you're saying what the question is to do with the forward work plan.
Yes,
I'm awfully sorry.
No, you're quite right.
And you know, budget cuts are frightening, and we should all be worried about what's going to happen next.
No,
but what is it about the forward work plan? Thank you.
You're quite right to bring me to book in this instance. What I want to know is, I'm seeking guidance. Can we, as a committee, ask for some work to be done to see what impact it'll be that there will be on specifically education, but also other aspects of our activities? Is it possible to build that into the work programme? So thank you for your gentle rebuke.
We all want to do the right thing here. I know that. So you mean when we know what that will be? Because I guess we don't know what the impact will be yet. So that's quite a difficult question for anybody to say when it would be able to be something we look at. Mark, is there anything that you can, in response to that? I mean, it's...
Well, again, Chair, really, I need to refer this to finance colleagues to see what can be done in terms of that. I don't know, Matt, if you can sort of provide any detail on it, on the practicalities, etc.
Quite clearly, we've only seen that note yesterday when it came out. So we're reviewing it ourselves. What I'd anticipate us doing is if there's any impact from that directly on the council, that we would incorporate that into planned and scheduled financial reports that are coming through to Cabinet. So either in one of the quarterly financial monitoring reports, or in the medium-term financial plan refresh, both of which come in November. And obviously this committee to have opportunity to review those once they're published.
November is looking a very busy committee.
Yes,
I must admit.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt and colleagues. Ideally, I'd like our own unique report rather than receiving a cabinet report. But if that's the best we can achieve, so be it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Goodjohn?
Can I just quickly make a comment? I don't think it matters if it's a cabinet report if we're going to look over it anyway. I think considering the short-term implications for this over the next 6 months, I think it's unreasonable to really ask for a separate report on the matter, especially when it's already considered as part of our regular business in maintaining scrutiny over the finances. So I endorse the approach suggested there by Matt. Can I just note as well, I understand the frustrations and I totally agree on the Oracle project. We do have some work that has been brought to us from the committee. I think the C1V report, which should be coming through, the customer relations report should be coming at the next meeting as well, which will be apparently an extremely packed agenda. That has come from the committee, and also the regular Project Zero update reports come from the committee. So there is work being done from the committee's basis, but we have to remember that between Project Zero and between the finances, we have a bigger statutory duty, you could say, than any other scrutiny committee, and that is the job we have to do. We have the task and finish group coming up, which should be a way for us to break away from these regular cycles of these reports that keep coming to us regularly from Cabinet, which I understand can be cumbersome, and when it keeps repeating, it feels like sometimes you're not getting anywhere, but we are, and that is the job we are here to do. So I would 100% agree with Councillor Johnson on the Oracle report, and I do think that if there are any other aspects that we feel as a committee we desperately need reports on in a medium-term aspect, instead of reacting to news stories, if there are aspects that we feel from financial reports that need more scrutiny, then we can request them. That's why this is here. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. And yes, as members, we can ask for reports, and as I think has been pointed out, indeed, it's kind of like our responsibility to, if there's anything in particular. So, and hopefully there would be room somewhere in our very busy forward work plan for us to be able to see these things. It's difficult for us to comment on some of these reports that Councillor Johnson has said are outstanding from before we were even on the council, and that does seem a little bit too long to wait. So, you know, hopefully Mark is going to be able to pick that up, and I look forward to reading those reports, even though we weren't actually at those meetings in the beginning. But thank you. Does anybody else now have any other questions that they'd like to put? No? That's great. Okay, so I think Mark's already read the recommendations, but we'll quickly do that again. And that was the status of actions in appendices A to D of the report be agreed, and that the updated forward work plan schedule for 23-24 attached in appendix E be approved and then uploaded to the council's website. So if we are content with that status, if we can have a hand to move. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton, and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. That's great. Thank you, everybody. Agenda item 6, which would be items which the chair considers to be urgent, part 1, and we don't have any. Agenda item 7, now this is moved to part 2. This is the bit where the press and public are excluded in accordance with section 100A, paragraph 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, in case anybody wants to know. And we don't have any items which fit that category, which I've decided are urgent. So then we can move to agenda item 8, which is the date of the next meeting in November. Mark,
November the 15th, Chair.
Lovely. So that's November the 15th. And everybody, we're going to have a really busy committee that night. So best to have your tea before we start, I think. Anyway, thanks everybody for your participation tonight, and have a good evening, and I'll see you next time.